Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to New Year's Celebration 2024 from Swami Tadatmananda. So I did skip a bit because he did his ritual and also did what was that? A mantra, I believe, right just right before this marker. So if you want to watch that, I highly encourage it. Although I did have some questions. Yes, here, you don't really get a good view of this person here. Or the statue. I was wondering if anyone knew who these statues were. So the one on the left, the center, and on the right. So here's a pretty clear shot of the center one, and the one on the right. But the left one, well, bad camera angle. So he does this ritual here. If you want to watch it again, there should be a link in the description. If not, you just, well, copy and paste essentially my title without the react, and I think you should pull it up. This is the New Year Celebration 2020, and then he talks about the Vedas here. He reads this, and then we get to this point. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
All right. Are we doing on time? Okay, not bad. Good. Once again, Happy New Year to you all. Wonderful to have you all here to celebrate the beginning of the new year. Every year is wonderful. Every year has new wonders and new challenges ahead, as you know very well. But in particular, each new year is an opportunity for us to begin with a new attitude. And when I say that, please be very clear, I do not mean making New Year's resolutions. Sorry, but I'm not a believer in New Year's resolutions. I don't think they work many times. In fact, sometimes they backfire, as it were, when you stop following your New Year's resolution after a day or two and you feel guilty. How is that helping you? I don't know. What we're talking about is not adopting a New Year's resolution, but developing a new attitude.
Real quick on the New Year's resolution, I never ever saw it as in something that you have to do. It's just something that you put a goal in mind that you want to achieve. That's it. You fail, you succeed, you succeed. But it's something that you definitely want to try to do. There's a reason why you chose that. New year, new you, new resolutions, you know? It's not, it's like after failing on your second day doesn't mean you just give up on it, you know? My gosh. No, it's just something like, okay, I failed, let's try again. It's something that you achieve over the year. And hopefully that you finally complete at the end of the year, and something that you retain for the rest of your life. So these New Year's resolutions are generally, hopefully, going to be something meaningful that changes who you are. And don't get me wrong, there could be some like I need a brand new car, a New Year's resolution.
Inculcating a more healthy way of seeing ourselves, seeing our lives, seeing the world around us. And that's what we're going to talk about today. A particular attitude taught by the teachings of Advaita Vedanta, which can be so much more effective than a New Year's resolution because it leads to an inner transformation. So the attitude for us to discuss today is called Sarvatma Bhava. Bhava means a state of being or a feeling, a state of being, sarva atma, the state of being the atma of all, the self of all. This statement, sarvatma bhava, can be understood at several levels. In the most profound Vedantic level, as many of you have learned in our classes here, Sarvatma Bhava refers to the fact that the consciousness which is present in your experience right now is not different from the so-called universal consciousness, the consciousness that pervades the universe. Some of you are familiar with the terms Jivatma and Paramatma. How do you say in Hindi? Ek hi hai. They are but one. We make this artificial division, but it is indeed an artificial division born of ignorance, and we have the teachings of the ancient rishis in the form of Advaita Vedanta to lead us to that discovery. And let me emphasize the fact that it's a personal discovery. It's not a matter of belief. This is one point that really sets Advaita Vedanta separate from so many other traditions. This is not something for you. If you believe, I am supreme consciousness, I am supreme consciousness, and then your spouse looks at you funny, and you get angry or hurt or upset. What happens to supreme consciousness? Oh yeah. So my point is that it's not a matter, belief is not enough. Belief is a wonderful starting point, but it's not enough. What we're after in following the teachings of Vedanta is not a belief, but rather a shift of understanding.
I like that. See, I've always, well, I won't say always. I know in the past, you could say I was kind of religious because my family was religious. I never really went to church. I didn't know what kind of religion I was in, but I believe there's a God up there. But then as I got older, I don't think belief is enough. Don't get me wrong, you can believe in things as long as you don't say it is fact. You can say, I believe that to be true, but you cannot say that is absolutely fact. So the difference is there is the fact that the reason why you say you believe it to be true because you have no other thing that would contest it to be false, but you don't know it to be a fact yet. So far, the things that you've done, let it to be true. So as far as you know, it is the truth, but you believe it to be true. There's not enough opposing things to try to break that down to say, oh, it went up to against 150 arguments and it's still standing right now. My belief in this is quite strong now. So it goes back to the reason why I kind of like this is back in India, as far as I heard, there's a lot of debates between the different kinds of philosophies, and they would throw arguments amongst arguments to each other, trying to destroy each other's, their position, not physically, of course. And that's great. The more an argument, if there's a position up here, and every time an argument tries to destroy it and it fails, it makes this argument so much stronger because every argument that failed it makes it stronger. That's the reason why I use the belief. That's why I say it's okay to say you believe in something to be true, only because you have a few arguments that says, yeah, it holds up so far.
A shift of understanding that leads to a kind of inner transformation. And inner transformation, as I said, in terms of how we see ourselves in the context of this world. We generally see ourselves as, what is it? Me versus them.
Oh, and let me get back to what I was trying to say, because I kind of went on a tangent real quick. I didn't like beliefs. So again, you can say you believe in kind of a religion or whatever, but you cannot say it's true. For you, if a lot of things tends to work out, I think that's great. But again, if you can't prove it to be fact, therefore you shouldn't say it is fact. Just because you believe it to be fact, it's not a fact. A belief and fact are two different things. And this is the reason why I kind of like this, because it's not necessarily. I guess what makes this a bit special is the fact that this is individual. Individual people must, I won't say believe, but believe and find it to be true for themselves. This truth doesn't have to apply to anyone else, and they don't enforce it on anyone else. Whereas religion, this is the one truth. Everyone must believe that. There's no second opinion about it. Whereas this one is every individual person has their own truth that works for them, and not it doesn't necessarily work for other people. But everyone has to do that self-discovery.
This is a huge problem. Me versus. Versus means there's some conflict, some contrast, some separation. Me versus them. I think I'm jumping ahead here. I am. Okay. And we're going to pick that up in just a moment. So I said at a profound Vedantic level, Sarvatma Bhava means this recognition of the oneness of the consciousness, which is your essential nature, Atma. At a more general level, at a common understanding in the Hindu tradition, is that the inner divinity that dwells within us all is the same. It's the same God that dwells in us all, the same Krishna, the same Vishnu, the same Devi, whatever aspect of Ishvara you want to consider. It is the same divinity that dwells within us all. None of you would ever believe for a moment that Lord Shiva dwells inside the Shaiva and not anything else. Vishnu was kicked out. So, on the other hand, in the Vaishnava, Lord Vishnu or Krishna dwells there, having kicked out Lord Shiva. None of you would come to that conclusion. My point being, it is one and the same divinity that dwells within us all. That is an expression of Sarvatma Bhava. This is our topic for today. One and the same divinity that dwells within us all. That's really a restatement of the profound Vedantic truth we began with. There's one more way of understanding that Sarvatma Bhava. In many places, the word Atma simply means self, but it has different references. So it can actually refer to your body. It often refers to your mind. Let us use it today to describe one's heart. One's heart can also be called Atma. When I say heart, I mean not the physical organ, but the seat of emotions, your emotional self. Sarvatma Bhava means a feeling that your heart is sarva, all. The feeling that your heart is vast. The feeling that your heart is limitless. Sarvatma Bhava can be understood in that way as well. I think in American English, sometimes they'll speak of big-heartedness. So how about big-heartedness times 1,000 to describe this Sarvatma Bhava? Because big-heartedness by times 1,000 is still times 1,000. How about times infinity for the mathematically inclined? That is Sarvatma Bhava. And let me explain what I mean by having a big heart. We start off in life with small hearts. What I mean to say by that is a child, like a 2-year-old, what does the 2-year-old love?
Toys?
It's an interesting question. Don't say that the 2-year-old loves mother and father. 2-year-olds are not old enough to understand what is love. It's not love. They need mother and father when they're 2 years old. Don't mistake that need for love. Love will come. Love comes in great measure, but it starts out with need. So therefore, who does the 2-year-old love? Me. Right?
Hmm.
Children are by nature self-focused, self-centered. They want what they want, and when you tell that 2-year-old no, what is the result? Tears, or crying, or in a worst case, screaming. Some children, and every child is different, and it's okay. It's all natural behavior. But my point being that for that young child, we can say the heart has yet to grow. Then, as an adult, of course, as children grow older, then they develop love for their parents. They develop love for their siblings. Will a 2-year-old have love for her siblings? Or will she be jealous of them? And I've not even raised children, and even I know this. Many of you are parents, you know far, far better than me. So that 2-year-old doesn't love siblings, doesn't even love parents. I love me, if the 2-year-old would speak. But by the time that 2-year-old is, I don't know, 5 or 6, you would know again much better than I would, that child develops love for parents and siblings. Can we think of that as the heart is expanding? Initially, the child herself was only in that scope of love. How's that? Love having a boundary, love having an edge. So for that 2-year-old, the edge was the 2-year-old herself, but then by 5 or 6, the scope of love, the boundaries of the heart have grown large enough to certainly include parents and siblings. What about cousins and aunts and uncles? Maybe not quite yet, but that comes. So certainly as adults, your scope, as it were, the range of the bigness of your heart would certainly include your extended family as well.
And
So that's an
friends.
example of how the heart grows from a child to an older child or young adult to that of an adult whose love, whose scope includes all extended family. But tell me, why should that growth of one's heart stop at your extended family? So this is the us versus them problem once again. So us is who's ever within this love bubble, which has a certain scope, a certain edge. For some people, that edge is very clearly at the end of their extended family. Why stop there? It's not completely arbitrary, right? And you've all discovered this anyway for yourself. You have many friends who are not relatives who you like a lot more than some of your relatives. That's normal, and that's okay. But that really is a way of showing how it's arbitrary to draw a line at the edges of your extended family. Definitely you should include friends and colleagues that you get along with, and many others. No need to confine it, but
And I think the reason why, obviously, is because generally speaking, there is a connection between family members. Generally speaking, if they're in good terms, they're family. And then with family, you kind of have family keeping family straight, as in making sure they do good or whatever as much as possible. And if a family member does bad to you, then the other family members can support you. Whatever. The reason I say that is because you could loan money to someone like your cousin, and then if you're struggling, your family would say, "Oh, we understand that you loan money and you're screwed over. Maybe the parents of their cousin will pay it back or something like that." There's a bit of a family honor system, you could say, maybe. And then with friends, the reason why you extend it out because they've earned your trust. They've earned a certain level of respect and trust from you. So, would you loan money to a friend, like a lot of money, that could get you in trouble if they don't pay you back? Well, that depends on the amount of trust that you have on them. And so you probably wouldn't loan it to someone who you just met. You probably wouldn't loan it to someone who you only knew for a year. You probably would do it for someone who you knew that bailed you out of jail, that had to hash your back, that got you out of trouble. I mean, that really earned your trust. So that's the reason why you say you expand that love to those friends. And the reason why you don't expand it to strangers because you don't know. You can't trust them in the same way. I say specifically trust because trust is what earns kind of the love, I suppose. Now, you can say that you give a certain level of respect and trust to everyone. That doesn't mean you trust them enough to give them $5 to pay you back. That's a different level of trust. But you can trust them enough to talk to them. Not necessarily to believe in everything they say, but you have to have I think you have to have a certain level of trust to be able to talk to them. Because if you don't trust them, you're not going to talk to them. And from there, you can develop a relationship.
Why stop there? We're talking about people you know, the people who play a role in your life. How about people you don't know? For example, you go shopping and you are checking out and paying for all the stuff, and the girl behind the checkout counter is having a hard time, maybe making some mistakes or slowing the checkout process down. You might have gotten irritated in such a situation, but tell me, why should that girl fall outside the edge of this scope, the edge of the bigness of your heart? Doesn't she also belong inside? What did she do to get kicked out, if we can turn it into a bad joke?
It's not what she didn't do, or what did she do? What did she do to get kicked out? She was never kicked out. She was never invited in the first place. She hasn't earned that spot in the bigness of the heart. That's what I would say to that. And of course, I think we all know this. This is how we kind of protect ourselves from bad people, because you can't just trust everyone. Well, you can trust most people, but not everyone. Bad people will take advantage of good people, and by the time you find out there's a bad person, it might already be too late.
She deserves to be included in those. We're talking about the heart growing. What would prevent your heart from growing large enough to include that girl at the checkout counter? If your heart stops growing, it's often been said, when you stop growing, you start dying. How's that? Grow or die. Those are your choices in life. It's like, to go to the medical analogy, if this heart gets that plaque, the calcium, and gets all stiff and hard, your heart doesn't beat as well if it gets stiff. We want that heart. And now I'm back to the emotional center. It is desirable that your heart should go on growing and growing and growing with each new year. Why should it stop? Why should it stop at the checkout person? You say, but I don't know her. Okay, what difference does it make? Tell me, is from a Vedantic perspective, the same consciousness is present in her as is present in your experience. From a general Hindu concept, the same divinity is present in her and you, in fact, equally present in both of you. So then why should she be excluded from being included through the growth of your heart.
Now, before he answers, so I want to reiterate essentially kind of what I said. Well, I'll do it from my point of view. So I give a certain level of trust to everyone, like a base level, and from there, you determine based on your actions on whether I trust you more or less. So this, I don't know if it's the same thing, but you could say this is the heart, as he's referring to, as in I'm not gonna hate you just because you exist. But I'm not gonna trust you just because you exist. I will have a certain level of trust and respect for everyone I just met. So you, from then on, will determine whether that trust and respect goes up in a positive manner or down in a negative manner. Just because the divine consciousness is within all of us, that doesn't mean you know that you are that divine consciousness. So you could be doing evil stuff. And don't get me wrong, like I can respect the fact that, if again, of the consciousness that we all have the same, but you don't know that, so you're acting pretty bad. But again, like I said, that certain level of trust and respect I give to everyone, you could almost say that's perhaps the equivalent of this heart that he's talking about, this love or heart or whatever it may be. It's that you give to everyone. You just don't hate them just because they exist. You don't hate them because they're struggling. I always I guess whenever people struggle or people mess up in life, I always think I do it too. I mean, I am no different than them in terms of messing up or doing whatever and having to clean up or fix whatever it may be. So I always understand the fact that they're not with them messing up. They're not perfect, and I already know I'm not perfect. So I'm the same as them. I mess up somewhere else too.
But then she's someone that you met. What about people that you haven't met? What about people that you will never meet? How about those children who are getting bombed in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Sudan? You'll never meet those children, but why should they be excluded from this process of growth? They are equally manifestations of the one divinity, which means they are, maybe not in your eyes, but in Ishvara's eyes, they are as special and important as you are and your family is. To Ishvara, everyone is the same. Everyone is one family. You've heard Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This entire world is one family. Most people don't think that at all. This is Ishvara's perspective. Ishvara is the one who has the vastest heart, the one for whom everyone is part of the one and same family. So that is the goal or limit, to have one's heart so big that it includes everyone without exception, including people you've never met, including people you don't know and never will meet, and very importantly, including people you don't like. Tell me, you say, but Swamiji, I don't like this person because of this, that, and that. Okay. This, that, and that.
Real quick, before he gets into this one too, I will say, again, I think practically. So whenever I speak, understand, I'm trying to be practical a little bit. And this is how I try to understand life. So it's kind of difficult, of course, to love or to include those people that you do not know and will never ever know. You don't know how many people are out there, so it's impossible to do that. And I would not struggle to say, oh, I don't know if I love that person the same way the person I don't know, I've never seen and will never ever meet. But again, again, I guess for me, the idea of just anyone that you ever meet for the very first time, treat them the exact same way as you would treat anyone you meet for the very first time, as with a bit of respect and a bit of respect and trust. Trust as in you. I don't mean that you lend them $5 and they'll pay you back, but it's a good way to test their trust, though, or a small amount of money to see if they'll pay you back. But again, most importantly, is just the respect part. Um, and that way, no matter whether you meet someone or not, you will always treat them the same, especially the first time you ever meet anyone. Now, obviously, he's about to get into what about the people that you don't like? Well, I will not disrespect them necessarily, but I will choose not to talk to them if at all possible, and if I don't have to. But if it's part of my job, then I will still do my job as to the best of my abilities. But that's about it.
Are these normal human traits, or are they somehow otherworldly? They're somehow extraordinary. Normal people have problems. Normal people get angry. Normal people can hurt you. That doesn't make them any less divine. Perhaps it makes them more human. I agree to that. But it doesn't make them less divine if they hurt you. Yeah. So therefore, why exclude them? They too equally divine. They too are part of the one family that Ishvara sees.
Well, the reason why you exclude them is because they potentially could keep on hurting you. But this goes back to there's this one guy. Oh man, he's a singer. But anyways, if you really want to change a person's mind, it's gonna hurt a lot, especially if that person doesn't like you. But it is possible. But you never know. It's possible but it's not guaranteed. So what I mean by this is that if there's someone that really hates you and you want that person not to hate you, then you're going to have to suffer, in a sense, to help that person, to be good friends with that person, and even be taken advantage of, generally speaking, to change that person's mind because that person doesn't like you. But if you really want that person at least not to hate you, depending on what it is, you more than likely will have to do things that you don't want to do and be taken advantage of. So, just so that they stop hating you or stop not liking you. Again, I don't know if this is something that people want to do. And that's not even guaranteed. They may continue to do that forever and ever, and you'll always be taken advantage of. But maybe you have to know when to stop when it's not possible to change that person's mind.
Ishvara is not a very good example. Little hard to relate. If I say, you should be like Ishvara, what does that mean, be like God? Let's use a more concrete example. And for me, the best example is my own guru, Pujya Swami Dayananda. I have never in my life met a person with a bigger heart. Yeah, I lived with him as a student for 3 years. I served as a manager of his ashram for several more years. I've spent lots of time with him personally and closely. And I can tell you that his heart was so big, you came and asked him for something, he would just give it. Do you know, if you asked him for money, he would give you money. If you asked him for advice, he'd give you advice. If you'd ask him for comfort, he would give you comfort. Whatever you wanted, whatever you needed, he was ready to give it. Why? The heart was so big. And when I say big without limit, here's a good example. How many swamis, big swamis, and he was in his time, he was a big swami, he answered his own phone. I don't know. Think about that just for a moment. Can you imagine calling President Biden? Do you think he's going to pick up the phone? You get my point. And he picked up the phone because he, there's often this problem, back to us and them, with a big Swami. It's the inner circle and everyone else. Not for him. For him, he was rare. And I think usually it happens, often. I won't say usually. Often it happens. There's an inner circle, and then there's everyone else. He had no such division. And I used to see that in satsang. Somebody would come to the ashram and meet him for the very first time. He'd give that person all his attention if the person wanted it. He wouldn't focus only on those inner circle people. He was ready to give fully to even a newcomer, someone he hadn't met before. Let me give you what I...
Real quick, so this is the thing. So very much so, if someone were to know, like a bad person were to know this, let's say a genuinely bad person were to know this, he would take advantage of this person. And the reason why I say genuinely bad as opposed to a bad person who takes advantage of this and then realize he starts to feel guilty because it's like, you know what, I can't help how good this person is, and I feel awful. This person, like, it's easy for a bad person to take advantage of another bad person because I can justify my action. He's a bad person, so I'm doing bad things to him. But if a regular bad person were to do that to a good, genuine good person, eventually I think he'll start feeling guilty and probably stop. He's like, I have to do this to someone else. I can't keep doing this to this person, because obviously people have done bad things in their life. There are bad people who can change to be good. Then you have the genuine bad people who just loves being bad.
I think is the most powerful example of my guru's big-heartedness. When I was manager, there was one ashram resident who was problematic. Problematic meaning he had some aggressive, confrontational, angry, and on one occasion, smoking marijuana in ashrams is usually frowned upon. Anyway, a number of problems like that. And other residents of the ashram went to Puja Swami Dayananda and asked him, please send this person away. Doesn't fit in this ashram. And for obvious reasons, didn't fit in the ashram. And I think many heads of ashram would have done exactly that. This person doesn't fit in our ashram environment. This person is making life difficult for other ashram residents, so therefore let this person go. Be very surprised. Puja Swamiji refused to send him away. Why? He said, an ashram, and here's the message, and this is really the message for us all, not just for his students at that time, but the message for us all is this. Being in an ashram, as you are right now, we're in an ashram, being in an ashram is an opportunity. Sorry. Being in an ashram is an opportunity for sadhana, for spiritual practice. And one of many spiritual practices is to cultivate a value called titiksha, accommodation. So, what Puja Swamiji taught us is this is a good opportunity for you to learn to be more accommodative, even of this difficult person. And he taught us how to. He didn't just tell us, you should be more accommodating. He taught us to be more accommodating. That really is so typical of him. He was the least directive person you'll ever meet. He didn't tell you, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. And many, sometimes people are like that. He wasn't like that at all, because he knew that if he, this is a general principle in life. Same for children. When you tell children, don't do that, as soon as you're gone, at least that's how it was for me when I was a child. Absolutely. So instead of telling you, parents, you've already learned this long ago. Instead of telling your children, don't do that, of course, when they're very young, that's appropriate. But when they get a little older, you learn that instead of telling them, you teach them. You teach them the consequences of doing the wrong thing. You teach them the benefits of doing the right thing. And having understood that, when you leave the child alone, no problem. He or she will continue because you have taught them the value. And that's what Pujya Swamiji did with us. He taught us the value of accommodation. And the value of accommodation is pretty obvious. We live in a world full of all kinds of difficulties, difficult people, difficult situations. If we don't learn how to be more accommodating, we're going to suffer endlessly. So, through helping us develop the value for accommodation, let me stress that point a little bit more before racing on to the next one. Suppose there's a person you don't like, and you're not going to put up with that nonsense. You're not going to put up with that person. Who cares? Blah blah blah. And you put up a mental wall between you, emotional wall we should call it, between you and that person. You don't want to have anything to do with them. So tell me, who is affected most by that attitude? When you put up that emotional wall, does it affect the other person? They could care less. But it affects you. It affects you in the sense that you feel discomfort in their presence because you've adopted this attitude. You become the victim of your own lack of accommodation. Can I say that again? The lack of accommodation makes you suffer, not the other person. And if you say, but Swamiji, look how obnoxious a person is. So what? It's not about the other person, it's about you. Do you want to be free from suffering or not? Do you want to be comfortable in that person's presence or not? It's not about the other person, it's about you. It's about cultivating accommodation. And this is sadhana, spiritual practice. Sadhana is what we do in an ashram, as we did in Arsha Vidya Gurukulam in Pennsylvania, as we do here in New Jersey. Our spiritual practice is really twofold. And you can break it down in many ways, but the two aspects we're talking about today. One is recognizing the value of accommodation. Pujya Swamiji taught long. By the way, he taught a lot about the value of values. And if you haven't read his book by that name, you should. Value of Values. brilliant piece of teaching. Anyway, that's what we're talking about. When you discover that being more accommodating is for your sake. We say we accommodate the other person. You're not accommodating. Yeah, in a manner of speaking, yes, you are accommodating the other person, but who is benefited by that accommodation? You much more so than the person you're accommodating. So that's what we did in the Salisbury ashram with that difficult ashram resident. We learned how to accommodate. And then after several years, he left of his own accord. He was not asked to leave, and that was, I think, a really important opportunity for all of us, our disciples of Pujya Swamiji, to learn that important lesson about accommodation. So that is at one level. That's at a we'll call it more of an emotional level, at the level of emotional growth. But there's another level.
I guess the question is, at this point, it's like, how accommodating is too accommodating? Can you become too accommodating, though? And I guess that's where the real question lies. At what point do you draw the line, or do you even draw the line? You know, saying his Swami would give him money, give him food, give him advice, etc. But what if someone asked for their ashram? Could someone ask for that? And at that point, would he? You know, he may have a big heart, but that affects his life and what he does. So I just kind of, the reason why I asked this question is because I want to know, is there even any line that can be drawn? Obviously, we as human beings, normal human beings, we draw lines all over the place. We draw a line to where, you know, even simple stuff, it doesn't have to be anything complicated. $1? No, I'm drawing a line. But, you know, my biggest thing is the fact that obviously I think we should all be kind to people. Absolutely, that's not an issue. Like, if people need money that you trust, again, going with the trust, that, you know, I don't see anything wrong with it necessarily. But then we have people who are so demanding or trying to take advantage of you. Then at that point, do you become accommodating for that? That's the question I have. If the Swami is, let's say, for example, if the Swami was willing to give away everything he owns, the clothes off his back, the ashram that he has, the house that he has, until he owns literally nothing, and is willing to do that, that's big. You know, when you give everything, yeah, I don't think there's much more you can give, well, besides your life, but I don't want to say that. But yeah, that would be, you know, I'd say, to me, that's going way too far. You know, obviously, it's quite clear this person's taking advantage of you, taking everything that you own. But, you know, I don't know. Let me know. What do you guys think? Do you think there's no limit to this accommodation, or do you think is there a limit to the accommodation? Anyways, that's part one of this. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down, down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.